Hello and welcome to Coast to Coast, real opinions, real women from sea to signing sea. And this is our third episode. We are covering the trial of Keith Raniere, and this is episode number 3. My name is Jenny Lee. I have with me Miss Emma.
Hi.
And Miss Mary.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, and a quick recap of the last session that we had. Um, we were covering a lot of the testimony that was going on regarding especially the age and the evidence of things like abortion and witness statements of who was allowed to do what with whom, the continuing mental process of becoming enslaved, and the invisible chains of control that were exercised upon people who are now stepping out of that panic and are trying to give a good testimony.
Yeah, I can't imagine even trying to leave a cult that you got into believing that you were part of a self-help organization, and by the time you realized that it was a sex cult, it was just too late.
And you're not hearing anything about any of the special counseling or attention the people had to have to become debriefed of this terrible control they were under.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
so we did end up. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're going to pick up now with the next part of the trial, Jenny.
Well, we had ended. We're actually going to do some coverage on some fallout from the trial. That's probably the best way to describe it at this point. The Frank Report has been doing some tremendous reporting on this. There's not very many people who are, but they are definitely a go-to source. But they had made some claims about some sources, and this is how we ended on our last show, so we'll start it here. That we, the Frank Report, previously reported that according to our source in Washington, D.C., discussions are ongoing between the Carlos Slim Foundation and the Clinton Foundation about a multi-million-dollar payment being negotiated or already negotiated. Possibly it is to be added to an amount previously contributed and increased now due to the severity of the situation. The severity of the situation is the son of the ex-Mexican president being a co-conspirator in the Nxivm trial and running the Mexican location and branches, which are still, we already established, are still running. We also noted that our source indicated that this is said to be a backroom deal to buy away the threatened indictment of Emiliano Salinas by United States Department of Justice prosecutors in the Nxivm criminal racketeering case. We added that our source said it is coming down to the last moments before an indictment may be handed down. Remember, he's still fine. His wife last week started canceling appearances. She's an actress. In real life, she stopped. So it's definitely coming down to the wire. The discussions are said to be intense. Some believe the Clintons can control DOJ outcomes at the highest levels. Example, Main Justice in Washington, D.C. Yet at this moment, more heat is on the Clintons than ever before due to so many scandals already revealed in the press. This is all recent. We're not reaching back. This is all recent stuff. One of the points of contention in the discussions is if the donation is made to the Clinton Foundation by Slim, can the Clintons deliver enough influence peddling to guarantee the indictment will be withheld? It is unknown what dollar amount may be in play or may have already changed hands between the Slim Foundation and the Clinton Foundation regarding this matter. And in a situation like this, where there is a distinct possibility that the son of a former president of Mexico may be indicted, a son who is being groomed to take over that very position, there are no boundaries as to what they will do to ensure that doesn't happen. The liaison between the Carlos Slim Foundation and the Clinton Foundation is reportedly the former mayor of Nogales, Arizona, Marco A. Lopez Jr., who has also been described as a card-carrying member of the Arizona Mafia. Mexico can be a dangerous place, especially for those who have been deemed enemies by Raniere. It was Mexico where Raniere and Emiliano plotted to lure several women that Raniere wanted to punish for leaving him and his Nxivm cult. In fact, I sent you guys earlier this week
Yes.
the phone conversation that had been recorded between Mary. Can you sum that up for us?
Yeah, basically what they were going to do was bring them to Mexico and set them up and get them arrested and locked up in a Mexican prison. They were supposed to meet with a writer, right, a reporter or something to write an expose.
And that was Barbara Boucher.
Oh, okay.
So it was to lure them out of the United States, so they could just so it was just a form of kidnapping.
Well, it was a great phone conversation because they actually started to realize the levity of the situation when they started realizing that NSA has everything.
Oh yeah. Even deleted emails are in the hopper.
So this is a conversation between Kristen Keefe and Barbara Boucher. Would you like me to try to bring it together here? I think it's important.
Sure.
Okay, so Barbara, I remember Tony calling me saying, "Are you getting phone calls from this Mexican journalist?" I said, "We've gotten some, but I hadn't actually connected with that person." And she says, "She wants me to come down. I'm not fucking going to Mexico. What are they, fucking crazy?" Again, I'm reading it word for word. Kristen, so here's the thing. You and Tony and possibly Susan was probably getting calls too, because they were after Susan and Kim as well. You can't imagine the importance of the evidence of these communications that this journalist was contacting you guys, because she was contacting you, if you recall, to go to Mexico for an anti-cult conference, correct? Do you remember that? Barbara, yeah, Tony told me that part of it. I didn't hear that part of it, but Tony told me. Kristen, it was an anti-cult conference. Here's what Keith and Emiliano did. They bribed a judge in Mexico to issue an indictment against you and Tony and Susan and Kim. They were at different times considering adding Rick Ross and Joe O'Hara, but then Joe got arrested and all these other people. Then Keith wheeled it down to just being the four of you. You were going to be lured into Mexico, and when you got to Mexico, they were going to put you in fucking prison. You should see the emails. Barbara, were they really? How serious were they? Kristen, they were serious as a fucking heart attack. I saw the judge's decision. Keith helped write it, and there were issues about Emiliano translating it. He worked on this for years, fucking years. This was like 3 years plot in the making. Barbara, wow. Wow. Kristen, and the only reason they didn't go forward with it is because when the journalists started contacting you guys and Tony was the only one that responded, there wasn't a strong response. Simultaneously, the lack of strong response, the police opened the probe into the computer trespass. So Keith downgraded the plot to have you guys thrown in prison, where he expected you to be raped and rot. He thought that the pressure would be so bad that Tony would turn on everybody and say whatever she had to get out, because he was like, Barbara will go down with the ship, and like, Barbara's never going to lie, but Tony will. That was his strategy and his belief. And they were going to put you in a miserable, horrible, violent, vile place, Barbara, right? Kristen. And the email, what happened was that Keith and Emiliano did this whole thing through a fucking Gmail account. I think it was an email address that they had just set up. And what they would do is communicate by writing drafts. Like they would both log on and communicate. Barbara. Yeah, exactly.
Now, you know wait, you know who else did that, right?
Yes. I do.
That was all done. That was all done via the Hillary Clinton server organization.
Yes, that was, we discovered that that's how they were also doing the same way to communicate.
Right, and what they do is everybody gets the same password in the same account.
Right, and they write it in the thing.
Right, and so what you do is you create a draft and you save the draft.
And that's how the terrorist organizations operate.
Right, and you log out, and the other person who's supposed to come in and get it and reads it. And the idea is that they wanted to avoid anything that would go over the internet.
Yeah, that's how the terrorist organizations operate.
Except, think about this. In order to get to the draft has to actually be on the Gmail server.
Yes.
Right, so wait, here, this is where she gets into it, and I love that this came out. It was really funny. Kristen, who's actually pretty smart. Here's the other thing. Keith didn't realize until Edward Snowden thing came out about the NSA. What he realized later was that they save fucking everything, and those emails are going to be in that account, even the drafts. Barbara, So the drafts, even if you don't save the draft and you delete them, it gets stored. Kristen, yes. Barbara, oh, I didn't know that. Kristen, it gets stored on the Gmail server and uploaded to the government. Barbara, okay, got it. Kristen, the Gmail server does the autosave. Barbara, yeah, that does. It's right, it does. Kristen, so this is going to be harder to prove because of the complexity of getting it, but I believe that you and Tony and possibly even Susan Kim have a basis to look into this because of the communications from the journalist. Why the fuck was this journalist contacting you? Barbara, right, well, I have emails. Kristen, you have emails. Perfect. Barbara, I mean, there are two different journalists that contacted me from Mexico, and I mean, I keep everything, Kristen, honest to God. Kristen, do you understand? Barbara, yeah. Kristen, the plot itself proves why and gives a valid basis for not disclosing the source. And at least I believe the communications from the Mexican journalists are enough to provide a basis for it to be investigated, even without having a witness to attest to it. But here's the thing, Barbara, that is why I'm fucking hiding. I mean, that's why I've had to take these extraordinary measures before I could get involved in this because it's fucking black. This is serious shit. Barbara, right. Kristen, I mean, this is when I was sub Rosa. I mean, in my mind, you can't imagine. You don't know how many stupid walks I did with Keith where he's saying these things and I'm saying, oh, that's a great idea. But in my mind, I'm thinking, he's a madman. Barbara, yeah, I know. Kristen, because I knew, but I learned from experience that the way I'm going to get him is by playing along until I have so much that I can crush him. But even when I left, I had to protect myself first before I could admit back. It takes time to get all this shit together. Barbara, do you have a prediction of what you think, how this will all go down for Keith? Do you think that we'll be able to hold him accountable? Kristen, yes, I do. And I think he will be thoroughly and utterly destroyed. And if he doesn't leave the country, then he's ultimately going to end up in arrests and indictments and some serious shit for everyone and everyone involved. Him, Nancy, Claire, and Emiliano especially. Barbara, right. Kristen, and you know what? I gave them fair fucking warning, and they're not getting their own attorneys to separate themselves from Keith. Then they deserve what they get. You know what I'm saying? And
why don't we stop for a second? Because
that's the end of the conversation.
Okay, but what stands out to me in this whole transcript, I mean, aside from the content,
Emiliano.
No, forget Emiliano for a second. Is Barbara's responses are completely inconsistent with somebody who has just found out that they were going to be double-crossed.
Yeah.
I mean, do any of her responses sound like somebody who just found out she was going to be dumped in a Mexican prison?
Well, I added tone that's not present in the print.
Never mind.
No, just the words. No, what Mary's doing is she's saying the thought pattern and the words.
The words
are not consistent in a response to someone who is in shock and pain and scared and betrayal. Those are
right.
It's almost matter of fact and forced indignation.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Wow. They're not all there either, so I wouldn't expect them to be.
Or it's a setup against somebody else. Remember,
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what Mary's getting at. And by the way, to keep in mind, and just as a little bit of techie talk, every email you send has something called a header. Do you know what that is?
Mm-hmm.
You can see them on your emails, and it's transmittal of information of all the different locations and addresses where that email, when it leaves your computer, goes to the recipient. So it's the complete path end to end, and you can actually look at it in most programs. Tells you what server took it, who got it, when it was delivered, and then back and forth again. Now, so her having an email, that way you can look forensically to find out if someone just took a piece of paper and created a pseudo email. Do you want to, when you print it, you go, oh, here's my email, here's my proof. Forensically, you'd have to pass the actual email itself over to a forensic specialist so that header could be produced and certified to be evidence. That's what forensics computer people do. They look at all the hops and skips and jumps that these different things go to.
Okay.
That was some of the stuff that, if you're interested, that's how they could tell that the Democratic server, the DNC server, was not hacked over the wire.
Yes, because of the time that it would have taken to transfer the data.
Yeah, it'd be like trying to suck a bowling ball through a straw.
Yeah. Okay, so the Frank Report puts this article up on this whole thing with the transcripts of the call, right? And their information from their insider in Washington. 8 days later, this little publication that you right, it's not like google.com, like frankreport.com. It's not that common. This publication gets a communication from Carlos Slim's people. I'm going to do a screen share on this one because I think it's important. Let me get over here real quick. So a spokesperson from here, let me get over y'all. Can you see that? Okay.
Got it.
I want you to be able to see the actual email that came from. So the spokesperson, Carlos Slim Helou, 79, is the 5th richest person in the world, for those who don't know who he is. According to Forbes' listing of the world's billionaires, with him and his family having a net worth estimated at $63 billion. He derived his fortune from holdings in a number of Mexican companies through his conglomerate Grupo Caruso. So they received correspondence this week from none other than the corporate communication manager of Grupo Caruso, Renato Flores Cartes, who wrote to inform me and my associate editor, Joe O'Hara, that a story I had written was incorrect. In that story, published September 2018, where Slim spokesman says is fake news, I reported that the source said discussions are ongoing between Carlos Slim Foundation and the Clinton Foundation about a multi-million-dollar payment, a backroom deal to buy away the threatened indictment of Emiliano Salinas by U.S. DOJ prosecutors in the Nxivm criminal racketeering trial. They went on to this stuff we already read. It's a matter of record that Emilio Salinas has been named as a criminal co-conspirator of Keith Raniere in the trial, but Salinas has not been indicted yet. I added yet. Prosecutor Assistant Attorney Moira Kim Penza made a flat-out declaration about his criminality. She said, so one of the email accounts appears to have been created by Emiliano Salinas, and the government alleges is a co-conspirator. And we also just read the transcripts of Kristen Keefe stating that he's one of the main ones that should go down. Here's precisely what Renato Flores Cartes wrote to me. Puts the whole thing up here. May 21st. Mr. Frank Parlato, editor-in-chief of frankreport.com. I'm writing to you about your information source, billionaire Carlos Slim trying to buy off Emiliano Salinas indictment via Clinton. All references in this information about Mr. Carlos Slim is absolutely false, based solely on speculation, and we were never been consulted previously according to the minimum journalistic standards. Relations between Carlos Slim Foundation and Clinton Foundation start since 2008. On this year, Bout Institution and the Canadian businessman Frank Castaria created a fund to social investment in Mexico, Colombia, and Peru. The resources never have a United States as destination. According with this information, we ask that you fully clarify your website of that fake news. Sincerely, Renato Flores Cartes, Corporate Communication Manager, Grupo Caruso. It is, of course, well known that Carlos Slim got his big leap forward in wealth building from his mentor, godfather, and friend, former Mexican President Carlos Salinas, who some even say is richer than Slim, even though you won't see Salinas mentioned in Forbes, and his father, which makes Carlos Slim sort of an uncle to Emiliano. According to our sources, Slim did meet with former U.S. President Bill Clinton in Mexico in March 2018, just days before Keith Raniere was arrested in Mexico.
They were probably talking about their grandchildren.
And the wedding, right? Wedding plans, yoga.
Yeah.
Yoga. The upshot is, and this is my clarification, this would be Frank saying this, as requested, there is no evidence of a bid by either Slim, who's the richest person in Mexico, or by the former Mexican President Salinas to buy the support of the Clintons to possibly save his son from an indictment in his rule in the Nxivm cult, despite damaging statements about the son's involvement by prosecutors in the case. However, as I previously reported, A high-ranking U.S. governmental source insists there was such an effort to buy the Sun's protection, and Slim, in response to my story, denies the effort ever took place. So he's fairly reporting this. But this is actually funny. So Slim's spokesperson, Renato Flores Cartes, sent both Joe O'Hara and myself the email quoted above. Joe is listed on our website as an associate editor. Somehow Joe thought that I forwarded Renato Flores Cartes' email to him instead of getting it directly from Slim's communication manager. Joe wrote, intending this humorous message for me, that, quote, I strongly suggest you avoid Mexican restaurants for the foreseeable future. Unfortunately, he actually sent this message to Renato. Receiving it, Renato was not amused, nor would I expect him to be. Renato replied, I strongly suggest you thoroughly review the information I sent you and do not take it lightly. A source close to Slim, and who knows Salinas, said that Slim and Salinas have different ways of handling things such as this. He said Carlos Slim Halu has a trove of lawyers who will gladly sue you on hourly retainer, and he is kindly disposed and will not take your life. As for Carlos Salinas de Gordy, my source added, he's more matter-of-fact businessman. If he perceives you as a threat, he will assassinate you. This may appear to be an accident. This latter judgment of Salinas is backed by many people in Mexico. Indeed, one leading journalist told me the straightest of faces that should Carlos Salinas find out about a certain story he was writing, with me as his source, his future would be grim, quite bleak, and likely non-existent. And until the publication of the story, he swore me to secrecy, a condition I upheld until he published the story. I just thought that whole exchange was so compelling, because here you have basically a Mexican drug lord. Right, and then he said you accidentally hit reply all.
Well, you know what we had been talking about Carlos Slims is that he was of, I think, Lebanese parents. So his parental connections go back to the Middle East. He's not, as everyone says, the richest. That's why people always say he's the richest man in Mexico instead of saying he's the richest Mexican. So it's very interesting how people place that in the news. And when the New York Times was going downhill, he bought a major share into the Times to make sure that his interests are taken care of. And what interests would that be? Well, most of his income is from the telecommunications industry that he basically owns in Mexico. Now, one thing I wanted to point out, if you start looking at all the images of all the illegals that are heading up the throat of Mexico to invade the United States, notice how many of them have cell phones.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and so they're so poor and so impoverished that somehow they had their cell phones at their location of where they began, wherever that is, and they are still able to get a signal all the way through Mexico. And although Mexico and Carlos Slims has a monopoly and charges ridiculous amounts of money for cell service and for everything they can add on to that.
They must have some great hotspots traveling with them. I can't even get Wi-Fi when I leave my house sometimes.
So what happens is, they have to keep the border open, and the transmittals that come from illegals who are in the United States, which is billions of dollars that are transferred wire transferred from the United States to Central South America and Mexico especially, because without that secondary part of income doesn't come into the circulation of Mexican commerce. You cut off the transmittals and think about how much money you lose from all that extra income. It's like cutting off a huge amount of their allowance.
Well, not only that, the transmittals, so you're talking about the wire transfers of cash.
Correct.
Right. Okay, so the transmittals are also used. We had a friend. We have a lot of Spanish people here. They send their money back to their country, and on the other end, the people there know who's sending the cash. So what they do is they'll kidnap a member of your family and then extort you for the funds. So the transmittals are also, creating a situation
Leverage
for other people as well. But it's interesting that you brought up the media angle, because the other thing we were going to highlight involves the media mogul in Mexico's daughter. Anna, I'm trying to remember her name. There's so many names to remember with
Well,
this.
okay, who's the Mexican media mogul?
Okay, so you asked me a question I don't know the answer to. But, all right, here we go.
Guys, I'm going to drop out of the Hangout a minute and bounce back in. I'm having a little computer issue here.
Okay, that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and show
Let's keep going.
the other part. Okay, so it was this day in the trial. I believe it was shortly after Mark Vincente testified that they had another person come in and testify, and it was the sex toy manufacturer. And there's a reason I'm showing this, because this is something you shouldn't just read. It really deserves a visual. So today, the trial of Keith Alan Rainier continued. He was wearing a blue sweater over a white button-down shirt. I'm telling you, they give great coverage on this site. In the morning, Sean Welch, the chief technology officer for Extreme Restraints, a sex toy manufacturer, was called to the witness stand by the prosecution.
This is what I come back to.
In essence, he served to testify that $922.74 worth of sex toys was purchased and delivered to the home of Daniela Padilla, a DOS front slave master at her home in Raleigh Drive in Knoxwood. She is one of these is, I think I might have this one wrong. They were purchased on the website extremerestraints.com in case anybody else is interested. Welch spoke about the items that Nxivm members ordered from his company. These are some of them. A hanging rubber strap cage for $299.95. No, the model is not Keith Rainier. A studded rubber paddle. A remote puppy trainer that's perfect for puppy play or naughty slaves. Assistant U.S. Attorney Moira Penza questioned Welch about the items, asking if one item described as a studded puppy paddle was meant for animals. No, Welch replied. Easy access thigh sling with riff cuffs. Welch said the device allows you to call the shots while your submissive partner is restrained and at your mercy, and a subdued full body strap set, he said, is used to paralyze your partner. Ankle shackles. 2 days later, another order in Padilla's name was placed for $1,730.90 worth of sex items. They were a jail cell for $1,049.99, a true piece of dungeon furniture. It can be used upright or horizontal. A steel puppy cage, not for animals, for $849. Welch said it was 3.5 feet by 4 feet wide. A wireless vibrating remote good boy vibrating puppy plug. I'm told the puppy plug is not to be used on puppies. A puppy play hood with breathable ball gag. It was a mask and a gag together with puppy dog ears. A bed restraint kit. Total for these items was $1,730.90. But the second order never went through because of an issue with payment and shipping, Welch said. The shipping address was different from the billing address, and the order was canceled. After Welch finished his testimony, there was a cross-examination. Mark Aganafilio asked if they sold thousands of these kinds of sex toys, and he said, there's no shortage of customers, right? Welch said, yes. Aganafilio said, and it's 100% legal to sell and buy these items. There's a community of people who have sex using these kind of items. Welch said, yes. Aganafilio, was there any increase in sales after June 2011 when 50 Shades of Grey came out? Welch said, we saw a slight increase. In redirect, the government asked Welch to describe the importance of safe words within this community that uses these kinds of items. He answered that it was essential. Welch explained what safe words were and added that everything in bondage was supposed to be consensual. In recross, Aganafilio asked if everything is consensual, then it's 100% legal and not inappropriate. Welch agreed. And next up would be Lauren Saltzman, but we're going to bring that one to you later because she's going to be a show on herself. Here are some of the government exhibits that were shown to the jury in connection to the witness. Collapsible full-size jail cell, the puppy plug, the bondage table, looks like the receipt and stuff. So that's that. We are going to quickly cover the background on the witness who comes up after Lauren, just to go ahead and do the background for this. This way we can bring you all of Lauren all at once with one, and then we can get back into Stephen Hebritz, because he's an interesting character. You know who I'm talking about, right?
Which one, Lauren?
Stephen Hebritz.
Stephen.
I guess I'll just go ahead and tell you his background, and then we'll have a discussion on him. Stephen Hebritz. There's some important background here, since the head patriarch, Edward Brofman's daughter, Sarah, had managed to install some spyware on her dad's computer, giving her access to all his email contacts and their information. He had global contacts in the political spectrum due to his work with the World Jewish Congress. Herberts, who is now 77, served for many years as a close confidant to Edward Brofman Sr., who as an advisor to several members of the Brofman family. It was Hebritz that Edward turned to for advice and assistance when Claire Brofman and Sarah Brofman became involved with Nxivm, an organization that Edgar described as a cult. In between college and law school, Hebritz worked as a congressional staffer and became famous for a book he wrote entitled How to End the Draft, The Case for All Volunteer Army. Even while attending law school, he served as a consultant to the Assistant Secretary of Defense. In 1974, Herberts was hired by Donald H. Rumsfeld and then Chief of Staff to President Gerald Ford. Later, he moved to Geneva, where he served as counsel to the U.S. delegation to the multinational trade negotiations. And in 1976, he returned to work with the Pentagon as the special assistant to the Secretary and Deputy Secretaries of Defense. It was in 1977 that Herberts was hired by the Nxivm Company, Ltd., which is where he met Edgar Brofman Sr. He held a variety of positions during his 20-year career at Nxivm, and during that time, he also became a close confidant of Edgar Brofman Sr. Following his retirement from Nxivm in 1997, Hebert established his own consulting firm, the Herberts Group. Among the various assignments that he took on as a consultant was to resolve the crisis that beset the World Jewish Congress at a time it was being headed up by Edgar Brofman Sr. The crisis at the WJC involved various financial irregularities that eventually led to a full-scale investigation by the New York State Attorney General. During that investigation, Herberts took over as the Secretary General of the WJC and eventually negotiated an end to the New York State investigation. Herberts was often entrusted by Edgar Brofman Sr. to handle the most delicate of matters. So he will be coming up after Lauren, and he is probably the number one. He relentlessly pursued this for his friend Edward.
Okay, so he's heavy duty on the political scheme. And you said he was an attorney, right?
A lot of political contacts. So it makes you wonder, whose email did they hack exactly if they had all that access? Who else did they have access to at that point? And you know that Keith already had beef with Bill Clinton. So what happened with that relationship?
Oh.
I'm curious to see who was the Attorney General.
Let's see what we've got here.
At the time.
So I'm looking under the Frank Report. In case anybody wanted to know where to get that, it is the URL for the Frank Report is frankreport.com. So, you know, they've got tabs on that. I just happened to be looking, you know, to follow up on what you were talking about, this Stephen guy. And there's an article about how Nxivm has earmarked and control over 400 URLs for various business aspects they do. So can you imagine the person who's trying to do follow-up on which of those are active and what they're being used for?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Crazy.
It's It's so vast and so far-reaching. And
Lordy. So you know who was the Attorney General who did this investigation into
You
the
there?
World Jewish Congress? Elliot Spitzer.
stop.
I can't stop because it's right there.
Elliot Spitzer, who got taken out in a sex scandal.
Yes, yes,
Because
yes.
I will
yes.
never forget the New York Post, the headline the next day was
Client 9.
Spitzer swallows.
Mr. Client number 9
So
himself.
was he part of the Nxivm?
He was probably taken down by it. I wouldn't doubt it.
Oh my God! You know, sometimes you got to go down these little
I can't imagine when they start
wormholes.
getting the mailing lists and all the connective.
You got to go down these wormholes
No
sometimes.
wonder people are sweating about this.
Yes, exactly.
Wow,
No
I don't know what made me go that route.
We'll have
but
to put that down on a research thing for Spitzer.
Now you know why the media is completely suppressing this.
Right. Okay, I've got that into the research list.
Okay.
It's just truly remarkable how completely vast and far-reaching this whole thing is. And a lot of it, because one of the main places was in Albany, that's why we're seeing a lot of it revolving around the New York politicians. Do you remember when it was rumored that Schumer was having an affair with his daughter's friend?
Yeah.
How do we know that that's not?
Exactly.
If this was going on since 1998, and you've got testimony from Sarah Edmondson that she enrolled 2,000 people. You've already heard from Marca Alfonte that he enrolled about 2,000 people. So you've got thousands. That's just two people, and you've already got 4,000 people that were enrolled, that many collateralized, that were sent out. Like, so here's one of the theories that people have out there since Michael Avenatti showed up in the courtroom as Brofman's attorney, which was bonkers in itself, is that Stormy Daniels was a Nxivm member, and they believe that she also has the brand. So it would make sense that they used all these women that were accusing President Trump of sexual abuse.
Oh boy.
You've got a whole trove of people that are willing to do this for you.
Well, they just tell them, here's what you need to say, and try to insert those lies as regular testimony.
Right.
Right?
I'm on a blog here, and I forgive me because I have not.
Okay, well, that'll be another thing we want to watch for then.
No vetting here, but Kirsten Gillibrand's father, Doug Rutnick, acted as a broker between Nxivm and then Attorney General Elliot Spitzer.
It's almost like this whole court case and investigation is a bottomless pit.
Yes, Mary. He was a consultant for Nxivm.
But he acted as a broker between Nxivm and Elliot Spitzer.
Yes.
Okay.
Is she mute?
No, she's not. No.
You can't hear me?
No, I can hear you.
Okay. Emma,
can you hear her?
No.
Oh.
Okay. Well, that's weird.
So she's stating that Kristen Gillibrand's dad, who was a consultant for Nxivm, was acting as the broker and go-between between Elliot Spitzer and Nxivm.
Wow.
I'm gonna put this here. I'm gonna put this in the chat window. I haven't had a chance to vet it because obviously we're on the air, but you check that out when you get a chance.
Yeah, it's really, you have to go to the dark web to really find this stuff. And I think people are starting to get a little bit more brave now and coming out and seeing much more comments now on the Frank report. But like, there's been a couple of deaths that have been very questionable. We had a young lady here on Long Island that recently, they said she committed suicide, and I just don't believe it because she worked as an escort, and I think that she was part of this. You're starting to see a lot of fallout as this trial is starting to go now, and it's not going their way. I think that you're going to see more people suicided because they have information that they don't want to get out. That's just my theory, my speculation.
It's also, the tentacles are long and multiple.
Yeah. So the next time we come back to bring another episode, we're going to cover the testimony of Lauren Salzman. Hers is incredible. It's just, it needs to be handled in that one piece. And then hopefully we'll have enough time to get Mr. Edwards guy on as well, but we'll see how that goes. So we're about halfway through the trial.
Wow.
And it continues to go on.
It continues. I can't believe you made the Elliot Spitzer connection tonight.
Wow.
That's crazy.
But has he been mentioned actually in any of the court documents?
They argued a lot over the evidence being admitted.
Right.
They haven't started going through it yet. They touched on, I remember that specifically Schumer's name came up. I remember reading that. I believe that was on Ayla Faron's blog. So remember, they're allowed to take notes.
Right.
They are not allowed.
Apparently, yes. Apparently, he's been named, and I'm again looking real briefly. Ben Zemkis.
Okay.
Did he testify? Is there a testimony?
Well, we're behind. That's why we're getting caught up to bring these to people.
Okay.
Light on it.
Okay. Well, apparently he does mention Ellie. He talks about, to clear things up, these are a list of people I met at a Nxivm recruitment party over a decade ago, and he does name Elliot Spitzer.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I know who you're talking about. This is the guy who came out and said he was going to name names of people at a party, and
well, he named Eric Schneiderman too. So it seems to be a theme with attorneys general.
Well, Eric Schneiderman was recently stepped down because of the kind of sex that was revealed that he likes to have with women is very rough, aggressive, and violent.
Yeah.
That fits right into this whole theme.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right. Why don't did we wrap up, or are we?
All right. So yes, we will be coming to you again on our next episode with the testimony of Lauren. But we hope that you're enjoying our coverage of the Nxivm trial of Keith Raniere. Have a good evening, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Night.